and then I'll share my screen. Well, good morning to everybody. I hope you all are doing well. It's been a while since I've had the opportunity to speak to all of you together, but I'm excited about what we're going to talk about today. Today we're going to focus on internal program mapping or internal program matchups. I'm going to just go ahead and dive right in. I know you guys have other things on the agenda for your morning meeting, but just to cover what we're going to work through, we're going to talk about investigating the possibilities and what your PBB implementation opens the door for. We're going to talk about the steps involved in this particular exercise, and then we're going to talk about the next steps. Yes.
I'm getting a really bad echo, and I tried muting ours.
You know what? Let me see. Looks like I'm going to, Chris and Jen, I'm going to mute both of you just to see if that is helpful. Okay, is that better? Well, I guess you can't tell me now if that's better, but unless you jump back in, I'm going to assume that's better. So I just want to walk you guys back through what you've accomplished thus far. Just before the new year last year, we were up in Duluth to kick off the PBB implementation. You guys went through inventory, allocations, scoring, and peer review to get your model complete in the 6-month timeline that you all had set as your goal. You did that by working really hard and meeting deadlines, and it was a very, very strong effort, and I think amazing things came out of it. Since then, you have gone through the exercise of identifying opportunities through program comments. You identified where there were potential changes in service levels as an opportunity, where there might be cost recovery opportunities, and then identifying whether or not there was potential for partnerships. You then were able to use that information in your presentations to council. And so now today, almost a year later, we are starting to review your program information to see what internal partnerships might exist. And then potentially in early 2019, we might extend that search into the surrounding community to look at the county, to look at nonprofits, to look at private businesses, to see where other partnerships might exist. All of these opportunities are available because of the hard work that you all did getting PBB implemented. You all have described every service you offer. You have done that with exquisite program descriptions. This is what truly allows for these discussions to happen. Without having these programs identified and described, it's very difficult to have this kind of conversation about where opportunities exist as far as partnerships, as far as cost recovery, as far as service levels. And so that effort is commendable on your part. Everything about your implementation was just smooth sailing, and I think will open the doors for some really exciting discussions in the future. So getting back to our purpose here today, we're introducing a new way to investigate possibilities. So what we're going to focus on today is identifying internal partnerships. So I am showing you our open PBB data site for Clear Creek County in Colorado. You'll see here that everything is broken into boxes and shaded for color. So you'll see each one of these sections is a department. So you'll see Sheriff's Office, Public Works, Health and Human Services, and each one of those boxes, the size of the box reflects the percentage of the budget going towards that particular program. The color of the box shows how many, the darker it is, the more times that program was marked as a potential partner. So we're going to go through the exercise, or talk about the exercise today about identifying those programs that could potentially be a partnership, And then we're going to clarify that opportunity, and then we're going to determine the nature of that opportunity. So you'll see on the left side of this slide, we have 3 different partnership designations. A true partnership, which is working together to share a responsibility and create an efficiency. To in-source, which is to actually go out and see who else you can offer that service to and potentially generate revenue that way. So looking at another department and saying, okay, I also do this and I am set up to do this really efficiently and really well. Can I take this on for you? The other side of that is looking to outsource. What's on your program inventory list that is just not something that you want to be doing? And is there somebody else in your organization who is already doing it and doing it really well and could potentially take that on for you? Okay, before we move into the step-by-step, I wanted you all to have the opportunity to hear about some of the other success stories that we have for this type of program mapping. And I'm actually going to unmute Chris because he is the one who has facilitated these different internal program mapping opportunities. So I'm going to put myself on mute and unmute Chris, let him share some of the stories.
Thanks a lot, Liz. And hopefully my audio is coming through clearly as well. But certainly please jump in, just like with Liz, if there's any echo or distortion. But my name's Chris Fabian, and I was part of the initial implementation team, as Liz mentioned, back last December. And this exercise, which is truly simple, it's a very simple idea, has started to provide some real breakthroughs for departments. And I wanted to address this basically from the perspective of an insider within local government, because that's where I came from, and the true spirit of trying to find internal partnerships. Some of you, I'm sure, as you're hearing the theme of this exercise, looking for ways that you and another department could collaborate, you might be thinking to yourself, well, duh, kind of. We do this already. We have plenty of examples of partnerships internally. Maybe you have plenty of examples of partnerships with external organizations, and of course you do. So I want you to suspend disbelief for just a second and hear us out. The breakthrough that we're truly finding in this program mapping exercise is that when you get down to sharing the specific information about all of the programs you identified in your program inventory, this is where we're starting to see more surprising breakthroughs take place. So I'll start with that Moffat County example in the top left. And it was actually an example with some neighbors in a program mapping exercise externally, sharing the program inventory data that they had come up with, just like you, in priority-based budgeting. For perspective, Moffat County is a very tiny, rural, remote community in northwestern Colorado. There is something like less than 15,000 people in the entire county. And as they embrace this kind of sharing of program inventory data with their service providers, there was a lot of, I don't know, sort of skepticism. Would they find any examples of ways to partner? There simply aren't that many services provided in the entire region. And a quick story about the power of the exercise. We were maybe 20 minutes into it. Moffat County had invited their regional hospital, their county seat, which is the city of Craig, a neighboring community college. Those entities got together, and Moffat County was just sharing its program inventory data with the other entities and saying, hey, are there any more partnerships we might come up with? And again, 20 minutes into the exercise, the CEO of the hospital looked at the county administrator from Moffat County government and said, I'm looking at your program inventory data, and I see here that you offer laundry services. Correct me if I'm wrong. My impression of you as a county government, you provide sheriff, you have a clerk and recorder, you do DMV, you have a highways department, you have a district attorney, you have a coroner. I would have never thought that you provide laundry services. It's just a surprise. I don't think of county government in the laundry business. And the county administrator looked back and said, well, we do actually. We have a substantial laundry facility in our detention center, and another one actually in our nursing home. We have a lot of laundry to take care of in the county. And the hospital director responded and said, wow, I guess I just never would have guessed. It turns out that the hospital has an immense demand for laundry, obviously, in a healthcare facility, but not guessing that anybody else locally would provide laundry. They actually ship their laundry 2.5 hours down south to another city, 2.5 hours. They have a full-time driver and a vehicle in their fleet, just assuming that nobody else would have provided that service locally. And it cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars per year in their budget, money that they would obviously rather have directed towards core services, but they're spending on laundry. And the light bulb moment for us was, wow, of course there are partnerships taking place. You partner regionally, you partner internally, but it's this sharing of literally the service inventory with one another, where we're seeing maybe you would have never guessed that another department offers a service where you could partner on. And I won't belabor this. I'll talk just a couple more examples. Shawnee down in the bottom area, Shawnee, Kansas, their staff, their versions of Jen and Wayne heard these same stories. And so they started to go around to their departments, sharing one department's program inventory with another department. And their city manager and assistant city manager said, what we want you to do is scour through, just like Liz said, other departments' inventory, looking for partnerships, looking for programs that you might get off of your plate. And they laughed. They said the very first time, departments kind of looked at them and said, well, we already partner, and I don't know. I think all the services that we provide are pretty core. There isn't anything that I would change. And so their first attempt at this was a total failure. They received 0 examples or ideas or suggestions for program consolidation or program partnership. Their next time around, they kind of had an emphatic plea. They would look at a department director and say, truly, do you have nothing on your plate that you would love for another department to take off of your plate, allowing you to free up your resources and start another program? And the department said, yeah, I get what you're saying. That sounds legitimate. Myself, Chris Fabian, as a former department head, there were plenty of items on my plate as a risk management director that I would have loved another department to take on. But in Shawnee, they said they didn't trust it. They were like, well, what happens if I do get rid of that program? Do I truly get to reallocate my resources? And that's where Shawnee had the follow through to say, yes, that's the whole point. We want you to offload programs where you can. And if you can do so, you can free up your own people's time to rededicate to other services you want to get into, or vice versa. There might be areas where you could insource a program where you find out you have no idea another department was providing a similar program as you provide, and maybe you could centralize or insource across the organization and create a tremendous efficiency. And that's where Shawnee finally had their breakthrough. My last story is simply Clear Creek County there on the left, and we'll share some examples throughout the rest of Liz's presentation this morning. But literally in Clear Creek County, what we had learned was this exercise was working really well when I would actually sit down with each of you, each department, and almost plea, looking at your program inventory, are you sure that there aren't programs that you provide today that, of all the important things that you do, in a perfect world, you would say, man, of course, I would love to get out of this particular program if I could reinvest the money that I currently spend and my employees' time towards something else. And the more that I would talk to department heads in Clear Creek County, I spent about 4 hours on site with each department during that workshop. The more the departments really got into it, scanning across the organization. And by the end, there was the county's head of the legal department, head of road and bridge saying, there's like 20% of our programs that I would sure love if somebody else would provide, if I could take my people and my money and redirect them towards enhancing current services that we simply don't have extra money to fund today. And that was the spirit, that was the tipping point. And so as Liz continues on, and I'll hand it back over, Liz, to you here in just a second, I hope that you listen to Liz for the instructions on the exercise, but really start to open your minds to thinking through, man, what if we could sort out who's doing what? What might you learn by scanning through every other department's program inventories? What if there are opportunities that emerge where you could free up your people and your money to be able to really enhance your services, start new programs where you might not have the additional revenues to do so today? But hopefully that's exciting. So Liz, I'll turn it back over to you for the rest of the discussion of implementation.
Thank you, Chris. So my plan is to just continue through. We'll have time for questions at the end that Chris and I will be available to answer, but I thought I would go ahead and just jump into the steps involved. So there are 3 steps in this exercise. 1 is the program matchup, 2, clarify the opportunity, and 3, identify the nature of the opportunity. So step 1, this is the example from Clear Creek County. This is their template. But step 1 is to just identify if there is potential for a partnership. So in the template that you all will receive from Jen and Wayne, this is what it's going to look like. And this first column is the matchup column. So this is just as you're going through the inventory of programs that exist for the city of Duluth, just putting a Y in the column where you see there is potential for a partnership. Nothing beyond that, just yes or no. So a Y or an N in that first step 1 column. What we will gain from this information is at the end, after all of the templates have been turned in and we compile this all into a master spreadsheet, is information like this. So you'll see in the far right column, these are all programs that were marked as a Y. Then I sorted it by program name, and you'll see that we had 3 different programs pop up that all related to property research. And we had about 5 different departments identify these for partnerships. So it's just being able to take a look and see what other departments identified your programs for partnership, what other programs did they identify for partnership that you might want to go and review. But it's just interesting to see that just within this property research, there is a wealth of information and a wealth of opportunity to look and see how it could be, this particular program of property research could be accomplished more efficiently. Some helpful hints as you get into your template is to search for similar program names, to search by keyword in both program name and description, and then to look for programs that other departments offer that may not have been in, you may not have spent enough time on that to warrant a program being created in your department, but you might look at a program and say, oh, I spend time on that. So even though it's not a program in my inventory, I've spent time on this and I want to see if there's a way for me to partner with this other department who actually has a program by that name. So just showing, I'm sure you all are all familiar with Excel, but just searching by program name, you'll see here, this is from the City of Duluth inventories, but just searching by events. And we can pull up all different special events, remembering, which is not shown here, but you all also have programs that are titled by specific event. So there are some events I know that are about, I think you have a bridge festival, I think Grandma's Marathon, but some of your programs are actually named by event. So as you're searching, as in this example, remembering to pull in those programs that have the event specific name in the title. Looking by description, so pulling down that filter and actually typing in a keyword. So you can pull up a different list of programs that maybe doesn't match perfectly by name, but has that keyword in it, and so potentially might have some relevance to you. And then by opportunity area. So if you're spending time, I know your inventories all include some administrative programs. And so thinking about what exists within that program that you could search and see if somebody else is offering. So I chose billing as a potential opportunity there. But there's lots of, I'm sure there are HR functions that all the departments are doing, invoicing, all that kind of work that you might not have identified a program for in your department, but it would be worth searching to see what other departments did identify a program. Okay, moving on to step 2. This is reviewing the complexity and value of the opportunity. So you'll see the next 2 columns there are under the clarify the opportunity. And this is where we are going to identify whether or not the value of the opportunity is high or low, and what the magnitude of complexity is, high or low. So when you think about that, the magnitude of the opportunity, is it a high dollar? Is it a high priority? If there's not a whole lot to gain from it, is it worth the effort? So looking at the magnitude of complexity, is this going to be a very sensitive topic? Is this going to create issues as far as just being able to make this happen? Versus, you know what, I think that we could just work together as directors and make this happen. So low level of complexity. Reviewing how this will look in the final data, you'll see here we have the program of website maintenance. This has been identified in 2 different departments, community development and information technology. You'll see we had about 4 different departments identify this as potential partnership, and we had a mix of low value and high value opportunities, but all of them were low level of complexity. So how difficult would it be to actually push this opportunity through, and what would be the benefit for both the departments with the programs existing and the departments that are looking to partner on that program? And moving right along to step 3, this final step is defining the approach you want to take on that partnership. So we're going to ask that you identify as a shared responsibility. So P for partner or shared responsibility. I for insourcing. This is something you do within your department, and you would be willing to take this off of somebody else's plate. And then O for outsource. This is something that you currently offer, but you would be willing to let somebody else do it, and you'd be willing to potentially pay a fee for that. But just something that's on your plate right now that you wish wasn't. So again, we've got the magnitude of opportunity, high or low, magnitude of complexity, high or low, and then the nature of the opportunity, partner, insource, or outsource. So looking over here at just some of the final data that's going to come through, citizen response and interface from the Public Works Department was identified by 3 outside departments for potential partnership. You'll see they were all marked with Ys so that we could sort them together as partnership opportunity. There was a mixture of high and low value, it was all high value, mixture of high and low complexity, and then a mix of insource, outsource, and partnership opportunities there. So one way to think about this as you are going through and trying to identify opportunities is to think about it on this plot of value versus complexity. So we have very complex and low value, less complex and low value, more complex but high value, and low complexity with high value. I think it'll be an easy way to understand that, of course, we're shooting for this low complexity, high value. This is a great place to start. Anything that's identified in this way would be a great opportunity for further discussion. The less complex, low value, and more complex, high value are still very interesting opportunities, but maybe not those quick hits that fall into that low complexity, high value quadrant. I think if we're looking at low value and very complex, that's probably something that you can just put on the back burner and filter away from, because that's not going to be probably worth your time and effort to make that happen. Okay, next steps. So we're asking that each department director identify 5 programs for partnership. To return the template to Jen and Wayne by November 16th. So I have a Dropbox set up, and I'm going to share that with Jen and Wayne. It has all of the templates within that Dropbox. Each department will receive a template that is identical to all the other templates, with the exception that it has your department name in the top left. That way you can go through and identify all of the partnerships, and then when we go back, we can compile all of it and return it to you in a master template that has all of the information that you all have shared. So where to start? Predict which departments you see potential for partnerships. Don't be overwhelmed and look through the entire city inventories at first. Start where you think you could have some wins. If you're kind of hitting a wall on how to think about it, look through your program inventory and determine what search terms and services you might be interested in looking for in the rest of the city's inventory. You can filter by total cost. So one of those columns is total cost, and you can filter so that you have the highest value opportunities at the top of your list. And then based on your inventory, think about what it is that you do really well that you could offer to other departments. And you can mark those as insourcing opportunities. What programs do you wish you didn't have to offer anymore? You can look and see if those are offered elsewhere for a potential outsourcing opportunity, so that you can reallocate those resources in your department towards a new offering or to improve a current offering. So what we're going to do is compile all of this and then think about what this means for the future. What department is going to offer the service going forward? How is there an efficiency gained, and what becomes of the newly freed up resources? So there is a comments column to the right of the nature of the partnership column. And so as you go through and identify whether or not it's a potential matchup, whether or not it is high value or low value, what the complexity is, and the nature of the partnership, to the right of all that, once you have those identified, go ahead and provide some comments and feedbacks for how you see this playing out in the future. And then once you have that completed, save your template and send it back to Jen and Wayne. Okay, that is the end of the presentation. I will share this recording. I will share these slides. And now we are available for any questions that you all might have for how we're going to get through this exercise.
Can you hear us, Liz?
I can hear you.
Do you have any questions? None?
Are we say we're supposed to, just going back, we were supposed to identify 5 programs. Are those our programs or just programs?
Liz, did you hear the question?
Yes, so we are asking for you to go through and identify 5 programs outside of your department that you could potentially partner with.
That's it, no other questions? Melby, I see your wheels spinning.
The only thought I have is, our organization has cut so drastically in the internal services functions that this analysis seems to be principally preoccupied with. That, the search for redundancies and surpluses of capacity is not likely to yield big troves of underutilized resources. In fact, where we see redundancy, it's likely to be the opposite. So, why does Denny's reduce custodial? Well, we have less than half as many custodians as we did 15 years ago. And so it's not because Denny's guys have, or we have this massive surplus of custodial, and now you guys can do all of it, or my guys can do all of it. It's that we've already cut to the bone and beyond, so everybody's scrambling to back up. And so, I'll try not to be too cynical about it, but
I mean, this is a good first step just to see how much we've already done.
Yeah.
We're probably going to see more potential with outside players.
Yeah.
Yes. This at least gets us ready to say, okay, we've kind of made sure our house is in order before we're going to go outside.
Yeah.
We've got some of those where we've broken up some activity like website stuff, that's broken up into 2 or 3 departments. And it's probably because IT doesn't have the resource to do it for everybody. Those some of those duties. Give us a chance to have a conversation about does that so before we actually then take a look at some of those outside parties.
Yeah, we'll go through that. I mean, the other piece is that a good internal service provider is not just giving people fish, they're teaching people to fish. And so you would expect to see IT services distributed throughout the organization if you have a good IT department that's asking each department to do some work themselves. And so that apparent redundancy will actually just be the result of a efficiency strategy.
Yeah, really good point. Did you hear all that, Chris and Liz?
I did. And I did like the point, you know, as you consider the exercise, you might be thinking, well, is this really decentralization versus centralization? Is that when you do it internally, is that the spirit of the exercise? And, you know, I've thought about that, obviously working with IT departments, facilities, fleet, and so on, where sometimes you see intentional decentralization of services because it's actually more efficient and better for end users. You might come across some of that stuff, and your custodial example is a great one. But you might also come across the exact opposite, where you're thinking, wow, it was just not so clear to me. For example, Liz had the permitting program across the city. And clearly, if you look at other departments, if your department provides permits to citizens for one reason or another, you might see, well, of course, other departments have permitting and inspections functions, and it's not even necessarily redundant whatsoever. You're inspecting totally different things, or you're permitting for completely different functions overall. But the light bulb moment might be, well, you know, given all the permitting that takes place, all the inspections, and given, at least this is what we've seen in other organizations, given the fact that sometimes there's a seasonal effect on permitting and inspections, it might occur to you, well, what is the possibility here for cross-training some of our inspectors, or cross-training on some of the functions where we are providing permitting? I'm talking conceptually. Perhaps we're already doing this. I don't mean to suggest that you're not. But as you start to see common functions across the organization, that's the idea. It's like, well, what could take place if we had that, if we were best positioned to provide this function more centrally or for the rest of the organization, or if it's not even insourcing or outsourcing, but it is truly partnering with another department, that partnership might take the form of a cross-training approach. We had one other small example, a kind of related story. In Clear Creek County, they had a fairly minor program, so like low value on Liz's spectrum, but low complexity. A couple of departments had identified essentially inquiries about property records. So the idea is that citizens are calling the county and they're asking one department or another, hey, do you have info on the last purchase date of this property? Or do you have info on the utilities provided, or where utilities are located for this particular property? Or do you have historic information about this property? Who's owned it over time? And it wasn't even that every department had identified property record investigations or property record research. Instead, many departments had not even identified the program at all because it was so small. But once departments started to see that there were other departments identifying this program, the conversation that took place in that room. Some departments were talking to each other saying, are you kidding me? Citizens call you too and ask for property information? Because they're calling my office all the time, or phone calls are being redirected to my department all the time. And it bogs down several of my staff. We have to chase down these records. We perform an analysis. We get back to the citizen and we try to move on, try to be helpful, but try to move on overall. And it was through this realization across many different departments that they're all doing that. I totally heard what you said. You might feel like, geez, you've already cut to the bone. You've looked for these centralization opportunities. You've looked for these partnerships. But in the records management story, these departments were saying, we simply didn't know that all of you guys were being bogged down with these phone calls. How can we centralize how we're responding to citizen inquiries about properties? Furthermore, for all of these individual research projects that take place when someone's trying to respond to a citizen, how do we house all of that data? Maybe there's an IT solution that we could be looking at. So again, just trying to help by way of example, truly as you start to scan through other departments' programs, there might be something tantalizing and surprising that you find out, wow, I just didn't realize another department is in this business.
Anything else? Any questions? All right.
No more questions. Thank you, Chris and Liz. We sure appreciate it.
Thank you guys. And I will send over those templates to you, Jen, and let me know what questions pop up after today.
I will do that.
You guys
Thanks, everybody.
Yep, have a good rest of the week.
Yep.
Thanks, you too.
So, as Keith mentioned, we don't really know what